Hi everyone, as you all know, I'm a huge adventure game fan. Which is obvious if you've looked at my past videos and reviews. So finally I decided to take all my favorite adventure games and make a top 10 out of them. Well, yeah, I've done that twice before, but now it's time to make a video of it that would actually look really cool. The rules for this list are simple, one game per franchise. There's way too many honorable mentions to hand out, but a few worthy of note here include Alien Incident and Simon the Sorcerer 2. I seriously considered having both on the list, but ended up including neither because I couldn't decide which one deserved it more. I also contemplated Phantasmagoria, but there's really only one FMV Heavy Sierra game that would warrant an entry. And I really love the opening of Broken Age, but the second half hasn't come out yet, so I can't really include it either. And if an adventure game you like isn't up here, feel free to mention it in the comments. And also remember that these are just my opinions and they don't really mean anything. Other honorable mentions will be mentioned as we go along, but enough introductions. As always, let's get on with the list. Number 10, The Longest Journey. This fun little title from the small Norwegian developer Funcom has a really strong cult rep, and I've had an uneven relationship with it. In fact, when I first played it, I think I really hated it, but over time, I've come around. Now, if there is one inherently flawed entry on this list, it's unquestionably this title, and I can't stress enough that The Longest Journey got up here on the strength of its writing alone. The story has impressive scope and mixes together sci-fi and fantasy elements really well. It has a wealth of mythos, and the characters are relatable and really sympathetic for the most part. If you can make your way through this game, I can guarantee that you're going to find the story to be one of the finest seen in any game. That said, there was definitely a lot left to be desired everywhere else. The in-game character models are quite horrendous, the skip feature is more than a little annoying, some of the voice acting is pretty mediocre, and there's perhaps just a smidge too much dialogue. I'm not even exaggerating, some in-game dialogue scenes can last up to a half hour. Also, some of the puzzles are just really stupid, and I don't mean that they're cryptic, I mean that they literally make no sense. So suffice to say, The Longest Journey is not for the faint of butt. But if you can bear some of the more asinine design choices of this game, you're in for a good time. Number 9, Strong Bad's cool game for attractive people. Like with everything else, modern adventure games don't really stand out to me as much as the old school. But of course, I had to put a Telltale title up here, and I might as well put up the one that made me laugh the hardest. Strong Bad's game is of course based on the internet cartoon Homestar Runner, and features all the iconic characters, locations, and music from the series, but presented in a way that's luckily accessible even to those who aren't Homestar Runner fans to begin with. Like all other Telltale games, this one is episodic, but there isn't a continuous storyline, and instead each episode is really its own self-contained mini-adventure game. As is the trend with modern adventure games, this game is quite a bit easier than older adventure games, but I honestly don't think that's a bad thing. I think they did a good job in transitioning the 2D Flash look into 3D, and the comedy and voice acting provided by the Brothers Chap is just as good as ever. I highly recommend episodes 2 and 5, the political imprisonment-themed Strong Baddie at the Free, and 8-Bit is Enough.
Why'd you bring that ugly, misshapen stick?
She organized the protest rally.
Not marzipan, though that's a pretty good one.
I also liked episodes 1 and 4, though they're not perhaps as excellent, and episode 3, the less said, the better. Number 8, Full Throttle. This gem comes from the LucasArts and Double Fine maestro Tim Schafer. The game is the story of a biker, Ben, out to avenge Malcolm Corley, the last motorcycle manufacturer in the country. Full Throttle is a comedic and action-packed post-apocalyptic biker adventure with a lot of attitude, great rock music, and relatable characters. Again, this game is definitely from the easier end of the adventure game spectrum, but that's not a bad thing. I really just like the ambiance and the biker fights. Due to its short length and admittedly high amount of cutscenes, Full Throttle definitely feels a bit more like a movie than a game, but I feel there isn't a single lackluster moment or sequence in the game, which is why it didn't bother me. In fact, I'm only disappointed they never made a sequel to this game. Number 7, Leisure Suit Larry 7, Love for Sale. If you haven't gotten intimate with Sierra's Larry series yet, I highly recommend you pick up one of the many installments of this classic series, or the remake for the first game, which came out recently, and was really good. However, if you ask me what the best installment of the series is, my answer is without hesitation Larry Love for Sale. What makes Larry so great is the comedy. It has a cheesy and juvenile sensibility to it, but Larry is just a lovable idiot, whom you cheer on no matter what the task. One of my favorite parts about this game is when Larry and the narrator argue with each other. It just really pulls you into the game's comedy.
You know, Larry, they only put 239 beans in that bowl of dip.
Oh, really? Why?
Because any more and it would be too farty.
That sounds like a Mark Siebert joke.
Surprisingly, the Larry games are also mercilessly difficult with really hard puzzles, which is about the only negative thing I can say about Larry 7. At the same time, everything else in the game is handled really well, from the voice acting to the cartoony look, that in the end the difficulty really doesn't faze me that much. If you love dirty jokes and beautiful women, Larry 7 is for you. Number 6, Beneath the Steel Sky. This is a lesser-known game from an established adventure game studio, Revolution Software. In this sci-fi cyberpunk story, you control Robert Foster, an orphan raised by a desert tribe and taken to the big city for unknown reasons. You witness your tribe die, have to resurrect your robot buddy Joey, and then uncover the mystery behind the actions of the city's administrative computer, Link. Beneath the Steel Sky is filled with fun characters and writing, brain-teasing but not overtly cryptic puzzles, and a really interesting atmosphere which changes from depressing to delightful to flat-out creepy. My favorite parts in the game are the fun conversations between Robert and Joey, and I also enjoy the plot, which gets steadily darker and creepier as the story goes on. Beneath the Steel Sky is 100% freeware, and you can get it from GOG or ScumVM's website, so definitely give this one a try. Number 5, Runaway, a road adventure. Runaway was made by an independent Spanish studio, Pendulo, and follows the adventure of Brian Basco. On his way to California to go to college, he accidentally hits a woman named Gina with his car, finds out mobsters are after her, and begins unraveling the mystery of what he first thinks is an ancient crucifix, but which turns out to be something else entirely. Runaway uses a mix of hand-drawn backgrounds and 3D cel-shaded character models. The look works well, and what I really like about Runaway is the down-to-earth feeling. There's a lot of flippant dialogue, and the characters are all fun and memorable. I also like how the story progresses naturally without overt supernatural elements until the final act, but even with that the game still keeps a nice sense of mystery around. As you can tell, I really like this game mostly for the art, characters, and plot, which probably clues you into the fact that this game does have some rather obvious and glaring flaws elsewhere. Now, I do think the voice cast is appropriate. The main problem with this game is actually the dialogue itself. It's just painfully obvious that the dialogue has been translated from another language and sounds a tad awkward and even just plain drawn out in a few places. Admittedly, this is a good thing since you always have a pretty clear idea of what you need to do at any given time, but the dialogue doesn't always sound very natural. Some of the puzzles are a bit tricky, and some inventory items do blend annoyingly into the background. That aside though, the game is just a lot of fun and my personal favorite from the Runaway series. Number 4, Broken Sword: The Shadow of the Templars. I reviewed the whole Broken Sword series a couple of years ago, so you probably all guessed that this game was going to be up here. The first game of the series by Revolution Software follows American lawyer George Stobart on vacation in Paris. He's caught in a cafe bombing which leads to the death of a man called Plantard. George starts investigating the identity of the murderer and ends up on the trail of what he believes to be the lost treasure of the Knights Templar. You're helped along by Nicole Collard, a photojournalist and a playable character in subsequent adventures, and travel to a number of countries looking for clues. Again, this game is definitely one of the easier adventure games, and what really sells it to me is the cool narration by Rolf Saxon. The characters are also a lot of fun, and I just love the idea of an unraveling mystery which is abound in this game. Both the original and the edited director's cut are now widely available through download services, so I highly recommend them. Personally, I prefer the original, but the director's cut has new puzzles and lets you play as Nico, so the new version has a few nifty things about it as well. I also recommend the second and third games, as well as the fifth and most recent installment, although you should really play the prior titles before you get into that one. Number 3, Gabriel Knight 3, Blood of the Sacred, Blood of the Damned. The Gabriel Knight trilogy of games is probably the most high-quality series of adventure games from Sierra. Although many love the original Sins of the Fathers, Gabriel Knight 3 was my introduction to the series and still easily my favorite game of the three. As the shadow hunter Gabriel Knight, you're tracking the kidnapped infant son of Prince James of Albany to the French town of Rennes-le-Château and start hunting for clues. I love this game due to its awesomely quirky cast, all of whom have their own hidden agenda. It's also the only 3D adventure game to date which actually feels like a 3D game, thanks to the free moving camera which allows you to inspect your surroundings from a multitude of angles. I also find the mystery to be great, with Tim Curry giving another memorable performance as Gabe, and Charity James playing the lovable history geek Grace, the second and my personal favorite of the two playable characters. That's about as much as I can say from this installment without spoiling too much. I reviewed the Gabriel Knight games a while back as well, and I really recommend the whole series, but the third installment is the nearest to my heart. Number 2, The Curse of Monkey Island. The third and my personal favorite out of the Monkey Island games. This one sees the hapless pirate Guybrush Threepwood finally propose to the love of his life, and see her turn into a solid gold statue. In this hilarious comedic adventure, you traverse the distant Blood Island and have to put up with caper-tossing, giant man-eating snakes, evil French pirates, and vegetarian cannibals. The Curse of Monkey Island is just filled with fun and cool characters like Bill,
Cutthroat Bill,
the Lost Welshman, and, of course, Murray the Demonic Skull. You have to solve a variety of interesting and challenging puzzles and traverse to interesting locations. What I love about this game is how it sucks you in, and you really become invested in the everyday struggles of the pirates living on Plunder Island. Of course, there's a lot of silly frivolity too, but I genuinely feel this game just has a rich world. Not to mention, singing barber pirates.
pirate I was meant to be, trim the sails and roam the sea.
Oh, and I haven't even gotten to the more superficial aspects, such as the beautiful Disney-esque graphics and that brilliant soundtrack from Michael Land, and the top-notch performances from the voice cast. This game is absolutely my favorite installment, right alongside the originals The Secret of Monkey Island and the fifth installment, Tales. But generally speaking, the entire Monkey Island series is worth a whirl. Number 1, Grim Fandango. In this crazy adventure, you're Manny Calavera, a travel agent to the newly dead. You're down on your luck and unable to catch saintly souls to sell travel packages to, which in turn makes it impossible for Manny to work off his own penance so that he can leave the land of the dead and find eternal rest. When Manny tries to steal a client, Mercedes Colomar, he's unable to find her travel package. Meche disappears and Manny becomes wrapped up in a conspiracy at his former employer's. Grim Fandango combines Mexican paper skeletons, film noir elements, and that typically hilarious writing from Tim Schafer to create an excellent and genuinely heartwarming adventure of a skeleton and his hot rod riding demon friend. This game also has some really difficult puzzles and fun cartoony atmosphere, not to mention probably one of my all-time favorite game soundtracks. The game has a lot of memorable moments, and despite its outlandish concept, features characters that ring very true. The story has some dark elements as well, but it never loses that LucasArts charm, which makes it so appealing. This game also just recently had an HD remastered version released, so go check that one out. And that's all from me for now. I'm Hunter the Hunter Mackinnon. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to also check out my blog on WordPress, where I will talk about more adventure games that didn't make the top 10. Links to that are in the description.